on. I'll go on. These are the last words of Samuel Beckett's novel, The Unnameable. And they reveal a paradox that is in all of our brains. Beckett mistrusted language, but he got the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1969. He was a lecturer in Trinity College in the 1930s, and his notebooks are in Trinity Library. If you go and look at his notebooks, there are not many words in them. They're abstract drawings, almost mathematical, his conception of his plays, his direction. Beckett was filled with doubt. He was tortured by it. He was an existentialist filled with the angst and the thoughts of futility of life. Yet in 1939 he joined the French resistance when he saw what was happening to his Jewish friends in Paris. And he narrowly escaped by the skin of his teeth the Gestapo and the torture and death that would have followed. Moved to southern France, hunted in the resistance. After the war, the French government awarded him the Croix de Guerre and the Médaille de Reconnaissance Française in recognition of his bravery, but he never talked about it. Shortly before his death, in 1969, someone was visiting his apartment in Paris. They went into his apartment and found him crouched on the floor by the window, holding up a mirror. Turns out he had formed a relationship with a prisoner in the neighboring prison, and was signaling to him, communicating with him by Morse code, using the mirror. And when Beckett directed a play, he did so with a single-minded focus on minutiae, absolutely dedication to the project. So how do we reconcile these two apparently paradoxical facets of his behavior? His doubt even as to the purpose of life, and his zeal, the passion with which he engaged with the world. The two were intertwined inseparably in his literature, his words, and his behavior. What does neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, tell us about this? Well, Beckett was right to mistrust words. There's evidence that under certain circumstances, speaking words, particularly in the moral domain, can actually give people a license to behave in the direction opposite to the words spoken. Words can very often be a substitute for action. Indeed, an antidote to the painful action. How often have we heard dictators talking about the democracy, using the word democracy so often? It's almost like in their subconscious or in their conscious mind they know it doesn't exist, but they use the word democracy all the time as a substitute. So, zeal, that commitment to action, to success, the zeal that is so apparent in this room and that was so amazingly apparent yesterday with these wonderful people that took us round Galicia. Zeal is a feature of a brain system that has to do with approaching. It's a reward, part of the reward-seeking system of the brain. It's a fundamental system in all mammals. And zeal involves the anticipating of success. Zeal activates the reward network, the single feel-good network that we have in our brains. It switches on that network. And that generates natural antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs in the brain. The dopamine, the reward network is a dopaminergic system. So that commitment to action, that anticipation of success is absolutely essential for leadership, essential for people taking action. But it has its downside as well. Because one thing that Zeal does, that approach system does, is to narrow our focus of attention. It literally narrows our attention, narrows it towards the goals that we're seeking. And excesses of zeal, particularly when it's mixed with power, leads to a distortion of the brain systems. Because the dopamine system, like many of the other neurotransmitters in the brain, has an upside-down U-shaped function. Too little and your brain underperforms, and too much and your brain underperforms. So an excess of zeal is an excess of reward anticipation. Too much dopamine actually distorts judgment and has very negative effects on a couple of other very important functions I'll mention in a moment. So what about doubt? Doubt is part of a primitive system of withdrawing from anticipated punishment. The punishment of failure, the punishment of rejection, the punishment of humiliation. And that activates a quite different set of neurochemical systems, including noradrenaline, part of the fight or flight system. And doubt is associated with anxiety and low mood. And in fact, in a state of doubt, your brain finds it difficult to remember past successes, evidence of past good things. Your memory systems are biased towards negative events in the same way as during zeal, your memory systems are biased towards remembering good things, past successes. So both of these have the risk of going into a self-perpetuating cycle of an excess of zeal or an excess of doubt. But there are positives in the doubt as well. Why? Well, actually, zeal and doubt are implemented to some extent in the two halves of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain is more linked to the dopamine system, the going forward, the reward anticipation, and the right half of the brain more to the punishment anticipation system, the withdrawal, the anxiety. But there are a number of other critical functions of that right hemisphere which can be switched on in a state of doubt. Empathy, widened attention, because in a state of doubt, you're anticipating threat, risk, you don't know what's going to happen. But widened attention opens you to new insights, new perceptions, new ideas, so it can lead to better creativity. But possibly the most important aspect of the doubt system, self-awareness. Self-awareness. My own research has shown the right frontal lobe of the brain is critical for self-monitoring, for monitoring who we are and how we're behaving moment to moment. Did I offend? Did I say the wrong thing? What did I just do? That kind of self-awareness, which can become paralyzing in the person filled with doubt, where that withdrawal system of the right hemisphere becomes dominant, where it becomes difficult then to switch on the zeal forward-looking, reward-anticipating system. Because this is a primitive feature of the human brain. These two halves of the brain are in competition with each other. They're trying to inhibit each other all the time. So if one becomes weakened in one way, the other will become excessive. So the left hemisphere in this approach system is optimistic, goal-focused, linear, and grasping. The left hemisphere controls the right hand. It's to do with, neurologically, with grasping, with reaching out, with getting. The right hemisphere of the brain, with its broad focus, it's seeing the wood rather than the trees, it's Gestalt, it's wordless, broad focus, it's image-dominated thinking, and it's non-linear, making connections kinds of thinking, means that that part of the brain, and the evidence is clear in this, is essential for a different kind of thinking from that the left hemisphere engages in, and that is intuitive, non-linear thinking. That apperception, that insight. And it's linked, the right hemisphere is more linked to emotions. And if we overuse the approach system of the left hemisphere, which is so linked to language and words, we can inhibit these emotion-focused, Gestalt, wordless systems, which can actually lead to great humanity and great insight. Beckett, paradoxically, self-undermined his own language. Every word he self-undermined. His self-doubt and his doubt of language was actually demonstrating the human brain at its highest level of achievement. A delicate balance, a dance between zeal and doubt, between outward focus, future focus of the zeal, and the inward focus, the reflecting focus of the doubt. All ideologies are wrong. Yet we cannot function without ideas. No more than a jazz player can improvise without the theme. The brain's capacity for meta-awareness, for watching yourself watching, thinking about yourself thinking, monitoring yourself monitoring, this meta-awareness is what the best leaders should aspire to be experts in their own mental theatre. Humanity needs a meta-narrative in its quest to thrive and survive. And such a meta-narrative, I believe, requires us to self-consciously walk this tightrope between zeal and doubt. And I think Samuel Beckett gives us a clue how to embrace such a redeeming and empowering narrative. Thank you.